Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Vijeta, and today we shall be doing Net Paper 1, People, Development and Environment. Some questions are asked from this chapter also, so we shall do it. A BPA free logo can be found in which one of the following products? The answer is plastic bottles. C. BPA stands for bisphenol A, an industrial chemical that has been used to make certain plastic and resins. Burning coal for power and heat is a major source of mercury emissions. Certain cosmetic and pharmaceutical products contain inorganic mercury in significant amounts. C. Coal contains mercury as well as other hazardous air pollutants that are emitted when coal is burned in coal fired power plants, industrial boilers, and household stoves. Also, if we look at statement 2, mercury is contained in many products including pharmaceutical and cosmetic products. So both of these statements are correct. Sometimes these questions are asked assertion 1, assertion 2, and you have to tell if both the statements are correct or both are false, or one is correct, other is false, or rather the second one is asserting the first one or not. These kind of questions. The principle behind the concept of climate justice is that it warrants differentiated climate responsibilities for countries. See, climate justice strikes a balance between the historical responsibilities of developed countries, especially, and the developmental aspirations of poor countries or developing countries. See, the principles of climate justice require countries to have differentiated responsibilities. See, a developed country will have different kind of responsibilities than a developing countries, because all of the kind of factors are involved: economic factors, the resources to, the money, the resources, the time, the technology. Every country has different kinds of variants of these factors. Some countries have great technology, they can recycle their products very easily. Some countries don't have the money. Economically, they are not very uh, they are not very good at that time, and they might not have those resources. So all of the countries have different kind of aspirations or different kind of responsibilities. It's not that every country should have the same kind of responsibilities towards maintaining the aspirations and goals of the summits and the various climate promises that we do. See, the principles of climate justice require countries to have differentiated responsibilities in addressing the climate crisis. It's the basis of the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, and that is CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities. Sometimes this question is asked: which of these statements most accurately describes the term ecosystem? I have written the correct statement here. A functionally independent unit of nature where living organisms interact among themselves as well as with their physical environment. That's an ecosystem. Interaction is happening. Living organisms are interacting with themselves and the environment, and that is what an ecosystem is. That is why this term is also used very interchangeably in other sectors also. Even in corporate fields, they say the ecosystem is very good, because we are interacting with each other, but the resources, the infrastructure, that is also helping us, especially with neurodivergent people. The infrastructure affects them a lot in their work, and in a way they are interacting with the infrastructure, the color, the designs, and all of those things to increase their productivity. So ecosystem is that kind of a word which is now used very interchangeably, but its primary meaning is this: how many of the following gases are capable of producing direct greenhouse effect? They are ozone, water vapor, and methane. See, the thing is with ammonia, the option of ammonia was also given, but the thing is, ammonia is not a direct greenhouse gas. That is a confusion to a lot of people. It occurs in nature primarily produced by anaerobic decay of plant and animal matter. We know that. And following the deposition to soil, it may be converted to nitrous oxide, which is an important greenhouse gas. Remember that. And it also has a substantial indirect impact on climate through its role as particulate matter. So ammonia is not a direct greenhouse gas. Indirectly, it affects nature, but not directly. And the question is direct greenhouse effect. So you have to always read the question very carefully in order to, answer, because so many options are given, and the option of choosing one, two, three, it all goes on. In the GATE exam, you have some questions in which you can choose two options. So these are the things you have to keep in mind. Carbon monoxide is also not a direct greenhouse gas. A lot of people get confused with that, because carbon monoxide forms whenever carbon based fuels are burned. See, though carbon monoxide does not cause climate change directly, its presence affects the abundance of greenhouse gases such as methane and carbon dioxide, and it also contributes to the formation of tropospheric ozone, another air pollutant with unhealthy effects. So you can see that carbon monoxide is something that is enabling other pollutants. Okay, its presence affects methane and carbon dioxide. It also contributes to the formation of tropospheric ozone, and it's an air pollutant. So sometimes people might think that carbon monoxide should also be there, but no. Carbon monoxide is actually what? It's an it's not causing direct greenhouse effect. It's causing indirect greenhouse effect. So you have to keep that in mind. And excuse me for if you can hear some sounds. I took care not to, have this thing, but sometimes inevitable situations occur. Anyways, the phenomenon of ocean acidification reduces the ocean's ability to mitigate climate change. As the ocean becomes more acidic, its ability to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere decreases. See, both of these statements are correct. And greenhouse gas emissions, as they increase, the oceans are silently absorbing a lot of annual carbon dioxide emissions. Obviously, that's true. More industries, more carbon dioxide, and oceans are absorbing them. And even with the data that we have, that oceans have shown a continuous decline in pH levels. And it has happened over the last 20 to 30 years. With the industrialization increasing, especially in India, you can see that ocean and all over the world, oceans have this pH levels disturbed. Their acidification has increased. And now, as you can understand, if oceans acidity increases, the acidification increases, its ability to absorb the carbon dioxide that it primarily does, it lowers down. It's natural, which is affecting the environment on a large scale. Because if your carbon dioxide is not absorbed, it's present in the environment and it's affecting people's health. So, yeah, both of these statements are correct. And you can understand how all of these things are related to each other: industrialization, ocean acidification, carbon dioxide increase in the environment, people's health. So, in a way, this chapter is very important, not for net only, but also for the increasing consciousness of people as to why we need to understand how climate change, how environmental change is impacting people, and looking at data rather than being into the politics of it all would help us to mitigate the problem. So that is my 2 cents on this. With reference to environmental pollution, in wind power, there are virtually no air or water emissions, or radiation, or solid waste production. So, yeah, that's something. Wind power has few environmental impacts. You should understand that. Because there are virtually no air or water emissions, or radiation, or solid waste production. Okay? So, that is something. See, wind power, obviously, if you can think about it, it's very easy to understand that it will have no environmental impacts because there are no emissions. It's just plain old wind. And there is no radiation, there is no solid waste, there is no liquid waste, even air, there is no nothing. So, wind power is actually one of the best alternatives for getting your fuel, for getting your power source without impacting the environment. And with reference to ozone depletion, ground level ozone is identified as a pollutant under the Kyoto Protocol regulations. That's not correct. You have to understand that. Ground level ozone is identified as a pollutant under the Kyoto Protocol regulations. It's not correct. The pollutants that are covered under Kyoto Protocol regulations are carbon dioxide, which is CO2, methane, which is CH4. Sometimes they might ask you, just remember the symbols, the chemical formula that is nitrous oxide, N2O, hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, perfluorocarbons, PFCs, sulfur hexafluoride, SF6. These are the ones that are the pollutants covered, not ground level ozone. Ozone depletion is measured in Dobson units. Know these things, sometimes they might ask. The ozone hole appears only during spring in Antarctica. The Vienna Convention for the Protection of the Ozone Layer was the first convention of any kind to be signed and ratified by every country involved. These things, should remember that because sometimes they can ask. And yeah, there's one more thing I would like to add, that biomass energy is not carbon neutral. A lot of people think that biomass energy is carbon neutral, but it is not true. Biomass energy is not carbon neutral, because methane is getting released and carbon is there in this. Even water from geothermal reservoirs or reservoirs often contain minerals that are corrosive and polluting. So a lot of people might think that geothermal reservoirs are also, not damaging, but it's not true. They have some water in itself has some minerals which are corrosive and polluting. Geothermal fluids are a problem which must be treated before disposal. So geothermal reservoirs and biomass energy, these two, I wanted to reference that in here with reference to the environmental pollution, because wind power is the only one which is the least problematic or not at all problematic. If we compare it with biomass energy and geothermal energy, a lot of people think that biomass energy, geothermal energy, wind power, they cluster them together. But no, wind power is the least problematic, and biomass energy and your geothermal reservoirs, they do have some problems, some hitches. So keep that in mind. With reference to microplastics, adsorption techniques can be utilized to minimize microplastic contamination. However, Bohr mediation cannot. This statement was given, but it's not correct. C. In recent years, a variety of emerging technologies like membrane filtration, adsorption, bioremediation, advanced oxidative process have been developed for the efficient removal of microplastics with promising results. So it's not correct that Bohr mediation cannot do it. Even Bohr mediation can do it. So these new words, these new processes, you have to keep them in mind because sometimes they actually cluster it or combine it with something that is correct? See, that's a very clever question. If you see, adsorption techniques can be utilized. Adsorption, a lot of people know, we have studied it, but biomediation, some people might not know, a lot of people might not know. And if you think about it, you might say, huh, adsorption techniques is right, but I have not heard about biomediation, so maybe biomediation is not cannot do that thing, and you can mark it as a correct statement. But no, biomediation, adsorption techniques, both can be utilized to minimize microplastic contamination. Now, some facts about microplastics are that microplastics are not biodegradable, but they are susceptible to photodegradation. That is there. An important direct source of microplastics is personal care products like cosmetics, toothpaste, all these lipsticks, and all these things. They all have microplastics. And even microplastic pollution was detected in human blood for the first time, because everything that we have, it contains microplastics. Even the drinking water, I heard somewhere, even not heard, actually I watched it on the news, that microplastics have been detected in drinking water. So most of the places are uh, getting this microplastic contamination, and there's actually least that we can do about it right now. However, these were the questions. Answers. The Paris Agreement. The principle recognizes the principles of equity and common differentiated responsibilities. I talked about the common differentiated responsibilities. Every country has a different kind of responsibility according based on its economy, technology, and developmental status. And Paris Agreement pertains to the 2020 climate actions. And Paris Agreement actually deals with greenhouse gas emissions only. Okay, it doesn't focus broadly on environmental pollution. So keep that in mind. It's a very tricky, very thin line here, because sometimes they might ask you if whether the statement is correct or not. So keep that in mind, that Paris Agreement deals only with greenhouse gas emissions. Does not deal broadly with the environmental pollution aspect. Okay. Which of the following gas has no color, taste, and odor? That's carbon monoxide. And it's a gas which is formed by, I'm sure a lot of people know that it is formed by the incomplete combustion of fossil fuels from vehicles generally, and burning of fossil fuels like natural gas, coal, etc. These things emit carbon monoxide, and actually it's very dangerous because it has no odor. Colorless and tasteless, most of the gases are, but having no odor and being so dangerous at such a level, because I heard about an accident of a carbon monoxide poisoning um, in a place where a family actually they passed away because it was cold outside and they had closed all the windows and everything, and they were burning some fire inside the house, and they slept, and by the morning they had passed on. And the thing is, like, they passed on in their sleep, and when people found out, they realized that it was the fossils that were burning, and their incomplete burn combustion must have produced carbon monoxide, and it proved fatal for the family. So you have to keep that in mind, that carbon monoxide can be emitted like that. So just keep your windows and doors open whenever you are burning fuel and stuff like that. And it's quite kind of dangerous because having no odor, you won't get a sense of danger, or some your defenses won't be up. And that is why carbon monoxide is actually a very dangerous gas. Carbon dioxide also doesn't have a very susceptible odor, I might say. Yet, carbon monoxide is more dangerous. It's fatal than carbon dioxide. So you have to keep that in mind. Which of the following pollutant gases is not produced both naturally and is produced as a result of industrial pollution, that is CFC? CFCs or chlorofluorocarbons actually don't occur naturally. They are man made gases, which were first developed in the 1930s, like 100 years ago, for use in refrigeration system because refrigerators came around that time, and CFCs are actually man made gases. So, there we have it. In the formation of surface ozone, which of the following play an important role? Oxides of nitrogen, sunlight, and carbon monoxide. So, yeah, surface ozone is actually formed when hydrocarbon or carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, they all combine in the presence of sunlight. So, you get your surface ozone through this concoction here. And I hope this lecture gave you some aspects of environmental pollution and prepared you for UGC net as well. And if you liked my video, give it a share, subscribe to my channel, like it, and I will meet you all in the next video. Thank you.